He says that the man was defending her. Excuse me, look at this video. What, a man should never hit a woman.
So the attorney, the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, is going to look into this. The FBI is investigating that. And the quest that you've signed up for, tell everybody. This is your opportunity to tell somebody. Look at that guy. I mean, can you imagine?
She is pressing charges. She was on last night with Laura and...
Hey, so what's up, YouTube? So I figure videos have to be a little bit entertaining, not just informative. So once a week I come over to this store and I climb up these rocks here. Usually there's not too many people around. I usually do it later in the day. Whoop. I've been wanting to talk about a lot of things. About Nick Shirley and Minnesota and everything. And I'll tell you, you know, most people are on one side of the fence or the other. I have voted Democrat and I have voted Republican. I voted on each side depending on who I like. But as of late, well, last time I voted on the Democrat side was Obama, and I regret that. And I haven't voted Democrat since. But if John F. Kennedy were running on the Democrat side, I'd vote for him today. But anyway, there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and I really don't want to get it too mixed up. But let me put this on this tripod. I don't like this selfie stick. That thing did not hold. Well, now it's drooping again. It's not very. I guess I have to get a pair of pliers or something. The wing nut is very small, and getting it to stay tight is difficult. All right, so we'll try this. I have to feed these cats. These are wildcats out here. There's a couple of them. So once a week I come here and I give them crunchies and water. It's probably not all that they need, but I'm probably not really helping in the long run. Probably making it worse. But I rescue a lot of cats at my house. But let's talk about some things. Let's talk about some things. Because I want to talk about the protests. And I'm planning on doing a better video of it, but I'm new at making videos on YouTube. I could really use some help with some comments or some likes or some subscribes and stuff. And you can always unsubscribe later. That would really help me out so I could get my channel rolling. But I'm going to just try to, you know, I feel like I have to be responsible. You know, like it's my duty to get in and participate. Oh crap, I didn't bring the, oh man. I thought this was the wrong one. I needed more water than this. I might have to go back down. I could always come tomorrow too, or this weekend. So anyway, I want to talk about the reporter that was attacked in Minnesota, the female. She was apparently working for the same organization that Charlie Kirk worked at before they killed him. And I watch these protesters. Now, there is a lot to be said about these protesters right now. I'll say a couple of things that are really important. Number one, and I won't cover this topic completely, but Tim Walz and his crew, they not only gave those protesters, we're calling them protesters, they're really what they are is they're really the irresponsible, underdeveloped adolescent adults, probably angry anyway, just because they're not doing well in their life. They don't look like the kind of people that are doing well in their life. And they've been given permission to just go crazy. More crazy than they normally are. That's why Walz told the police to stand down, so that they would go in there. And now that was not only, like you could say, well, that was very irresponsible of Tim Walz to send the public. Because, you know, in the public, people have different mentalities. But when you let those kinds of people go through, like, okay, let's go back to the reporter, a petite female reporter, and a big dude, 200 pound, 220, maybe 250 pound man, big guy, comes up from behind this petite woman and shoves her hard, and she falls face forward onto the ground. She could have broken her wrist, and I know some of those protesters would go, yeah, that'd be great if she broke her wrist. Okay, but that was assault, and he's being indicted now for it. And there's another woman who was blowing a whistle in her ear, chasing her and blowing a whistle in her ear, and thinking, well, I'm not touching you, therefore it's not assault. Actually, it is assault. She's weaponizing a whistle, and that sounds kind of like funny, right? Weaponizing a whistle, but the whistle can actually do hearing damage. So it is a physical assault. She's using a sonic assault. She's assaulting with a sonic weapon. And so that's illegal. That is totally illegal to do that. But those people are too dumb to understand that. And why wouldn't it be illegal? They're just too stupid to understand something so simple that you have to say, oh, look, it's a law. Oh, I didn't know it was a law. Why would you need to know that it's a law that you shouldn't do that? You would. You know it's wrong inherently. And therefore, there's probably a law against it. And there is. You can't assault somebody. But she's like, oh, I'm not touching you. You know, if someone were blowing a whistle and chasing me down and getting this close to my ear and blowing a whistle as loud as they could in my ear, I would shove that whistle directly into their face. I would palm that whistle directly into their face, shoving it up into their gums, maybe up into their septum, or maybe right through their teeth, something. But I would shove it in there and cause injury. But that petite woman, and she was young. See, I'm not young. I've had my share of battles and problems with people. So my tolerance is all run out. See, I don't do those sorts of things to people. I would never do that to somebody. Not even if I disagreed with their politics. I would never do that. I'll tell you another thing that's illegal. When somebody is reporting, and to then bring your body in and slowly just walk in front of them and wedge yourself between the person that they're interviewing, that's an impediment, and that's illegal. And it's written in law. That's illegal. And that's considered assault. If I were talking to someone and I were reporting, and two guys came up and started crowding me around and putting their signs in front of my face, I would explain to them one time, it's against the law and this is a form of assault. I may even have the paper with me and read it to them, and then I would ask them one time to get back. And if they didn't get back, I would defend myself from that assault. I don't care if they're just standing there, not doing anything other than getting in my way. I would harm them for the assault. I'm not going to move. I'm going to stand my ground. But most people just move. They shouldn't. Okay? These people are lunatics. And Tim Walz sent them in there. And that, you could say, was irresponsible of Tim Walz. But you can say a lot more than that. And I will say more than that. So let's talk about this. Okay? So it was irresponsible to do that because it was illegal to do that. He is not allowed to incite riots with the public. And the fact that one man came up behind that young petite woman and hold on a second. So Tim Walz could be said to be negligent But it's actually more than that, because look at the evidence, okay? This man got in this woman's, got behind this woman. He was a big guy too. He got behind this petite woman and shoved her in the back and knocked her onto the ground, right? Hard, face down hard. She could have really been hurt. She probably was sore afterwards, at least. Joint problems, and I saw her neck. When he did that to her, her neck snapped backwards, just like if you get whiplash in a car accident. If he had done that to me, I would have gone to the chiropractor and the doctor for whiplash, and I would have sued him for injuries. Now, he's being indicted by the FBI, and hopefully we'll get some added case law to the situation. I didn't get enough water for these guys, but I'll give them what I have. So, yeah, I just put it all in here. That'll get them through tomorrow and the next day, and then I'll be back. And so you could say, well, yeah, that was really negligent of Tim Walz to do that, right? Here's my little bag. Yeah. Put all my goodies in there for the kitties. So you can say, yeah, that was very irresponsible of Tim Walz, because look, when you send thousands of people into the street to interfere with the agents, you're going to have, like, out of every 100 people, you're going to have those kinds of people, especially. You're going to have a few that are going to go and really cross the line, like this idiot man did. He crossed the line. And I use the term man loosely. Can you imagine if that idiot did that in my state? You know, went and pushed a woman down in a parking lot. Guys would kick his ass. You know, there were men around him that should have kicked his ass for that. Even men on his side of the political spectrum should have kicked his ass for that. Even if it wasn't a woman, even if it was just somebody else. But to do it to a woman, I don't care if she's a reporter for Kirk's old outfit that he was. I don't even know the name of his outfit. I should know it. It's a Christian organization, and so she was reporting for them. Now, can you imagine if I were to take a whistle and go blowing it into a woman's ear from this far away? If I did that in my town, you know, they would probably call the police, but and she'd probably move away the way the reporter did. But if I did that in an environment around men in my town, I would probably get my ass kicked. I'd definitely get yanked up by the collar, for sure. And if I had pushed a woman onto the ground, I can assure you, I'd get piled on. So I don't know what kind of men you have in Minnesota on the liberal side, but those aren't real men. You don't let a guy do that to anybody, let alone a woman that's half the man's size or even less than half the man's size. So these people are not responsible. They're not adults. They're literally, they are crazy. They are crazy people. So, and I don't consider myself to be a full Republican, even though I am conservative in some ways. And I don't consider myself to be a full liberal, even though I am liberal in some ways. So I'm like in the middle, overlapping on the sides and everything. I just have a different view. I don't pick like one hard side. But you would say, like, don't you understand that a governor would know that you can't put thousands of people in the street and tell them to, they call it protesting, but to tell them to get in the way? And they organize teachers. They use their phones, and they all logged in to the same source so that they could all get messages together. Like, okay, the agent's over here, go over there. And just like Renee Good, they gave her instructions to drive her car. They were written instructions to drive her car in front of the agents and block and impede the agents. You don't tell people to do that to agents with guns and weapons. You don't use your car you don't weaponize your car around the police That is so stupid. And you will get shot if you fool around that way. And you should know that. It's not like the agents did something wrong. You're like, oh yeah, they didn't have to shoot it. No, look, you can nitpick the situation, but the answer is you don't do it at all, because it creates this confusion and it leads to death. So you don't get near it. That's what's called intelligence, intelligent choices. You don't get near it. You're supposed to stay away from that situation, not supposed to create it. But they sent them in there to create it. And the reason they did, because they knew that it would cause a shooting. They just had to push it far enough, and they knew it would eventually happen. That's why they had those protesters out there, and they told the police to stand down. You know why they told the police to stand down? Because they didn't want those protesters to stop. They wanted to drive those agents to the brink. And they did, keeping them up all night, banging on the hotel windows, trying to poison their food, talking to the hospital, saying if they come in, treat them, give their treatment this way so they get sick, spit in their food, give them, rotten food. All kinds of things were said to do to these people that happen to be agents, keeping them up all night so they can't sleep, trying to using physiological, psychological, and physiological warfare against them, and telling the police to stand down, disturbing the peace all night long, all day long, 3 shifts, organized by teachers, organized by the governor. They knew that somebody would cross the line like Preddy did. Preddy crossed the line. When you put a gun on your hip, you have a higher duty legally. It's a written law. You have a higher duty to stay out of trouble. And if trouble finds you, you try to escape the trouble. You do everything possible to avoid using that weapon. And you certainly don't harass the police with a loaded, ready-to-fire gun on your hip. You don't do that. If you go in and harass the police, and you've got a ready, loaded gun on your hip, it looks like, and in my opinion, it probably was, an attempt to find an excuse to kill those police, to kill those agents. Think about it. Go back and look at the Preddy wrestling match with the police. Remember how he grabbed the woman? He reached out away from the police, and he grabbed her by the backpack. They were saying that he was trying to help her up. No, he wasn't. He was trying to drag her into him with the police so that he would have a better excuse to shoot those agents. That was a premeditated attempt at murder, and he failed. He failed because he's a dumbass. But think about it. There's always a few idiots that will cross those lines. And that, in my opinion, is what Tim Walz and his crew wanted. Omar, Fry, those teachers, maybe the teachers were just being buffoons and fools and pawns that were organizing. But see, they knew that you don't do that, because somebody will eventually get shot. That's why they told the police to stand down. So that thing could just run wild until somebody got killed. And 2 people got killed. I think there was actually a 3rd one. Got killed. So then they could stand on that and say, oh, look at the agents. They killed these people. They're out of control. They need new training. Defund them and all this other stuff. No, what you need to do is have a better trained public. Okay? Those so-called protesters, those rioters, those irritated, annoying adolescent adult buffoons that were running around protesting, they were causing the problem, not the ICE agents. Because in the states where they didn't do that to the ICE agents, there was no problem at all. No problem at all. So the problem was coming from them. And Walz knew it, and he wanted somebody to get killed. That's right. Tim Walz wanted someone to get shot. You think he cares about you? He does not care about you. He wanted someone to get shot so that they could stand on that and make a scene about it and then use it. And look how far they dragged it politically into the government, acting like ICE agents caused these problems. Again, a little bit chilly here in the wind. I'm going to back out. So now, if you're not very intelligent, you might not believe me. But you think about this. You don't think a governor knows that you don't fuck with the police like that? You don't think the governor knows that you don't go taunting them and harassing them like Preddy did? He would harass them to get them to chase him. That's why he was kicking out their taillights, spitting on their cars, getting in their way. forcing them, aggravating them to lure them toward him, and then he would get his phone and he put it up in front of him like this. Oh, I'm just an innocent, peaceful protester with my phone, observing. No, that's not what he was doing. He was irritating them. He wanted trouble, and they were pissed. You could tell that they were pissed at him, because you got to remember, they're not just agents, but they're people too. And those agents had been harassed. Ooh, it's nice and warm here by these rocks. Those agents. Okay, so those agents were, see, some of those dumb people will come here now and say, let's wait for him to come feed the cats, and then we'll kill him. Yeah, you try it. I'm in a state where we shoot back, so have fun. But see, they're all crazy. They're all crazy. They're all absolutely nuts. And Tim Walz took advantage of that. They all took advantage of that. To get those nutty people, they knew that those nutty people would go too far. See? You don't send the public en masse to harass armed agents by breaking the law to harass them. You don't go in the agents with a loaded gun harassing them, and you don't wrestle. See, as soon as Preddy put that gun on his hip, his legal duty was to not harass or get involved with the police. And if he has an encounter with the police, he needs to put his hands up. He needs to identify that he's armed and not wrestle with them. Once he started wrestling with them and not telling them that he had a gun and all that, he was out of limits. He was already breaking the law. He was out of limits, and he already created a situation where he could get killed. It was his fault in that regard. But remember, the last thing that the ICE agent said after they shot Preddy, one of the agents said, "Where's the gun?" And then he reemphasized even louder, "Where's the gun?" Right? He didn't know that the gun had been removed from Preddy. And of course, they didn't know that Preddy didn't have a second weapon. But he didn't know that that gun had been removed. And you know why he didn't know? Because all those protesters were screaming and yelling and blowing whistles and blowing car horns, and they wouldn't shut up, and those agents couldn't hear themselves think, let alone communicate. It makes sense. It totally makes sense. So Preddy got himself killed because he was a dumbass. Those protesters, who were all criminal dumbasses, they all contributed to the death of Preddy. And Tim Walz orchestrated the whole damn thing with the teachers to make sure that they would all show up to harass those ICE agents constantly. And he called it the guardrails. You don't send a bunch of lunatics from the public with all sorts of different mental states of mind, some stable, some unstable, most of them unstable. You don't send them into the streets in a hostile manner and tell the police to stand down, and then have them go in and harass those police 3 shifts, night and day, while they're sleeping, while they're out, all the time, always getting in their way, blocking them with cars, yelling and screaming at them, unless you intend on causing someone to get killed. And that's exactly what they wanted. Tim Walz wanted someone dead. So then the Democrats could try to stand on that and say, oh, we got to get rid of these ICE agents because look at what they did in Minnesota. They shot an innocent man in the street. If you hadn't done all that, you see, when something happens from a point of view of the law, you don't get to truncate it right there at the shooting and say, okay, we're just going to judge this based on the shooting. No, you have to go back and take everything into account. And if you don't do that, you're not doing it properly. You're not doing it legally. Okay? All the contributors to that death have to be taken into account. You can start with Walz and work your way down to Preddy, because all of them were responsible. Walz was responsible for creating the crowd that was hostile. Walz was responsible for telling the police to stand down. You know, governor's job is to protect everybody and keep the peace, not tell the police to stand down and cause trouble and cause harassment to the agents and cause threats to the public. No, he created all that. Tim Walz is an asshole. He's a total, and he is a moron too. He's actually stupid. He looks like a stupid man. And he talks like a stupid man. And he is a stupid man. I think saying that Tim Walz is retarded is actually too good, because I have a great story about a retarded person that makes you realize that, you know, retarded people are sometimes incredibly intelligent, just in a very unusual way. And so unusual that it's like their capabilities are sometimes far beyond our own. That's a whole nother story. Okay, think of Rain Man, right? So they called him Walz retarded, but he's way, that's not even, that word's too good for him. He's a maniacal psychopath, and he's an idiot. He's a psychopathic idiot. And he got Preddy killed and Renee killed, and they all orchestrated that, and all those protesters contributed to it. They were all contributory negligence, okay, interfering with the communications. If they hadn't been yelling and screaming, when the agent took the gun from Preddy and said, "I've got the weapon," and very carefully carried it away, responsibly carried it away to disarm it, they would have all heard it and said, "Okay, we got the weapon," and they wouldn't have been still freaking out. Because what was their job? What if you were an ICE agent, and we're going to change them to the National Immigration Control and Enforcement, the NICE agents. We're going to change their name to the NICE agents. If you were a NICE agent and Preddy came in there and created havoc, and you had to wrestle him to the ground, and you knew he had a gun, do you know what your duty would be? Your duty, you would have two duties. Three if you want to call it three. You could narrow it down to two. One duty would be to not allow the public to get shot by Preddy's gun. You would have to make sure that he does not fire off a round and have that bullet fly into somebody in the public. That's your duty. You have to make sure he doesn't shoot someone on the sidewalk, or someone in their car, or someone in a store where the bullet flies through the glass. That's your first duty, is to make sure he doesn't get a round off, so nobody in the public gets killed. Even if they are left crazy liberal morons in Minnesota, the Minnesota morons. Okay, even if that's what they are, I'll have my braces off in a week. So the second duty that you would have as a NICE agent would be to make sure that your partners don't get shot, the other agents don't get shot. And the third duty that you have is to make sure that you don't get shot. Your higher duty is to the public in general, but not necessarily. I mean, I don't know how to parse that out. I would say your higher duty is to the public. But yeah, in that situation, I would say that for sure. There are some situations where an officer is not duty bound to save somebody. If it means that he'll die in the process, that would just be an act of heroism. And that's a choice he would have to make, but it's not his duty. But in that situation, his duty is to make sure the public doesn't get shot. And then he also has to make sure that his agents don't get shot and that he doesn't get shot. And that's exactly what they did. And the only reason that Preddy got shot is because you Minnesota morons wouldn't stop screaming and yelling, blowing your whistles and blowing your horns, and preventing those agents from communicating. And the only reason that you were there doing that, breaking those laws and interfering and obstructing justice, is because Tim Walz let you do it. He encouraged you to do it. He kept encouraging you to do it, and he told the police to stand down so nobody could stop you from doing it. In short, Tim Walz is responsible for the death of Alex Preddy, Renee Good, and the other person that died that I don't know his name. I heard it maybe once, but I don't know it. Tim Walz, Fry, Ilhan Omar, are directly responsible for the death of Alex Preddy, and all those teachers that organized with their phones to incite the crowd and send the crowd to bother the agents are all wantonly negligent and responsible for the death of Alex Preddy. And all the people that screamed in the street, honked horns and blew whistles are responsible for the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy and the other guy. And Alex Preddy, what a dumbass to put a gun, a loaded, ready-to-fire gun on your hip and go around wrestling with officers that are also armed. Well, the only reason that he would have done that is that he wanted to find an excuse to kill those agents. The fact that he was pulling that woman by her backpack into him, in toward the agents, not pushing her away or getting his back to her and protecting her. No, he was grabbing her and yanking her into the ICE agents. So he could get a mix of her and him, so he could pull the gun out and shoot the agent and say, I was defending her. I think that was the plan. I think that was the original plan. But even without that as the plan, even if you didn't want to believe that Alex Preddy was trying to kill those agents, he was still a dumbass for wrestling with them with his gun on his hip, and he was duty-bound by law to not do that with a gun on his hip. He was actually duty-bound to not do it even if he didn't have a gun on his hip. Even if he didn't have a gun, he was duty-bound not to do it, right? That's right. And with a gun on his hip, he had a even higher duty to not do it, to not wrestle with them, and to not identify that he had a gun. His duty was to submit. Submit. He shouldn't even been out there with that gun if he was planning on wrestling with those police. But as soon as he got in a wrestling match with them, he should have said, no, it's okay. No, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight. I have a gun. I'm armed. Just so you know, I'm armed. Yeah. See, you put all that together, but, well, no. Because you have a, as Trump says, you have a low IQ. If you're one of those protesters, you have a low IQ. So with your low IQ, you can't see all of that. You can't see all of these details. You just think, oh no, he had a right to carry a gun. He had a right to a concealed weapon. He had a permit for it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When you put a gun on your hip, you can't then go in a bar and start bar fights. And then when someone fights you, you shoot them. It's hard to talk with braces, I'll tell you what. That's what I had to say. So, and you're not allowed to push people in their back and push them to the ground and blow whistles in the air. That's all assault. And you're not allowed to get in their way when they're reporting and block them from talking to people. That's assault. It's all legal. It's all written law. It already exists. But you people don't have a high enough IQ to understand that. See, an intelligent, reasonable person, they know not to do those things. Even if they didn't know the law, they know you don't do those things because they're higher intelligence and they understand that. Okay? In this country, in America, it's do no harm. That's the law. Do no harm. And everyone has the right. You don't have the right to interfere with people's rights. You don't have the right to block their passage, to get in their way, to interfere with their conversations, to blow whistles in there. You don't have any of those rights. None. None. At all. But when you're low IQ and you're adolescent and you haven't matured and you're just, you just didn't evolve. You didn't evolve. You've got the internet in front of you and you're just not evolving. You're hanging out with the wrong people. You're carrying around the wrong attitudes and you didn't evolve. And that's why you're out there on the streets acting like a fool. Do me a favor. Like and subscribe so I could do more rants and more cool videos. And I'll start taking you places if you want. I'll get on my hot rod mini bike. I'll drive you all around. Look, I'm not against the left being liberal. I'm not against you if you want to be liberal. But I'm against you being violent and vicious and illegal and maniacal and psychopathical. Psychopathical? I don't think that's a word, but we'll go with it. We'll make it a word. You're psychopaths. Psychopathic. But I'm not against the right either. I'm for the evolution of an intelligent society. And right now we have an internet, which is a type 1 communication system for an advanced society. But we're at the early stages, and a lot of the people are still not advancing, right? They're just not advancing. And anyway, I'm old, so I'll be out of here. I'll die soon. I'll be out of here. And you'll all be left to your own accords. And when you die, eventually, whether you get killed by one of each other or you just die naturally, which we all hope to do, just want to go naturally. And when I die, and when I'm dead, dead, dead and gone. If you know what that song is, you listen to cool music. So that's one of the greatest bands ever in the world, in the history of the world. That was one of the greatest bands in the world. You know, you should evolve. You really should abandon all of your attitudes and your ego-based beliefs that your ego is holding on to those things. You should advance beyond them. Look how beautiful. Look how beautiful. So like I said, if you're on the left, like if you're a gay person, I'm not against you. Now a person on the right would say, well, then you're immoral, you should be against them. No, I'm not. I'm not against them. But I'm not gay. See? Anyway, like and subscribe, help me out. If you don't like my message, you probably won't help me out, but it'd be great if you could maybe comment or like or subscribe. And you can also always unsubscribe later if I don't do good. You know, if I don't do well by you by making good videos, you can just click me out. But try me out. Put a subscribe. That'd be amazing. Stay tuned. I'll keep you posted.